Welcome back to the Home Service Expert. My name is Tommy Mello. Today I got an awesome guest. He wrote a couple really great books. His name's Andrew Wallas, and he's an expert in personal development, leadership coaching, and executive coaching. He's based out of the United Kingdom, so I love when we get guests from other parts of the world. Actually, he's the founder of Andrew Wallas, WALLAS.org. He's a chairman at CBC Partnership from 2017 to present. Business Alchemy. He's the CEO and founder from 2008 to present. He also is the CEO and founder of the School of Wizards. And he's also the CEO and founder of the Modern Day Wizard. Andrew Wallas is a highly successful businessman, author, and intuitive corporate chairman. He began his career in business in 1974 and was highly influential, developing companies which sold for over 20 million, 38.5 million, and 52 million pounds, I believe that is. He developed a radical new approach to business and a set of principles that can be applied to any business, regardless of size, to achieve radical transformation. So, Andrew, this is pretty cool. I was looking at your books earlier. Pretty big accomplishments here. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself, how you got started into business, and what you're up to today?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I sort of fell into business when I was 18, and I didn't do particularly well at school. And I had a mentor who took me under their wing, and I kind of learned through an apprenticeship model. I'm a big fan of the apprenticeship model rather than study. And I developed in that business and was given opportunity and did very well. So I ended up as CEO of that business. It was a small entrepreneurial business, and we grew very rapidly. And then at the age of 28, I decided to explore my inner world. I was interested in psychology. I was interested in philosophy. And so I then entered a period of study and a period of reflection and spent 10 years. I actually qualified as a psychologist, psychotherapist, saw clients, and then I went back into business, and I had another 10-year stint in business. And I built a business along different lines using my psychology and spirituality, and that was very successful. So I sold that business, went back into primarily an inner world life, and then went back to business again. So eventually I weave these two threads together because they were a little bit separate for a while. And through that, I came up with an alternative approach to business, which I feel passionate about. I love going into the business world and talking about a different way of doing business.
So tell me about that, a different way of doing business. So I know you wrote a book, it's called Intention, how to tap into the most underrated power, as well as the alchemy. I have it up here. I just right here. The other book you wrote is that's weird.
Business Alchemy.
Yeah, alchemy, but it's Business Alchemy, right?
Yeah.
So you wrote one book.
You know, Tommy, all of my work with individuals or with corporates, whether it's a 20-person company or a 20,000-person company, is primarily the same. So, we could talk about intention. Intention is hugely important. But just before we get to that, there's really a very simple set of principles that I introduce to people that is quite difficult for us to transition through. So, for example, one of the core principles is collaboration, not competition. And if you go to any business anywhere on the planet, whether it's in China, North America, Taiwan, Germany, England, whatever, and you sit down long enough, you hear people talk about their competitors. So everybody's interested in their competitors. And some people are more obsessed about their competitors than is healthy. But it's competition, competition, competition. And I talk about collaboration. What if we approached every business project based on a spirit of collaboration? And this makes a huge difference. I do it in my personal life. I do it in my business life. And it creates a certain amount of anxiety or fear in people. And yet, every time we operate from a place of collaboration, the outcome is significantly better than whether we're competing with someone for the same thing.
So one of the things I always tell people, we just passed, I think, 420 employees, is when I'm looking for someone in sales, usually they are, by the way, when I was in my master's degree, I didn't take any psychology, but my undergrad, I took a lot of psychology and took a couple AP classes in high school. So somewhat familiar with a lot of it. I've done a lot of personality tests, but I always try to find somebody that enjoys playing sports or a symphony or karate, because they were used to competition. They were used to competing and practicing to get better at something. And in sales, I feel like we always want to tell people where they're at. I think Jack Welch said it the best. He always let everybody know where they were. And you know, never would say I'm against collaboration, but I want to understand the difference here, because I want to win. No, I don't play to collaborate. I don't play a game and say, "Hey, I'm glad we played together today, even though you kicked our ass." I play to win. And there's a certain character trait that we've identified with in all of our technicians that are at the top. And that's they're competitive. No matter what they do, they're going to give their best effort. My CSRs, their performance pay, that answer the phones. My dispatchers are performance pay. My managers are performance pay. Now, they don't compete necessarily against each other on everything. My CSRs don't, but there's still a ranking. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around this, because in home service, I want to be the best garage door company in North America and hopefully some other countries. But explain to me this philosophy a little bit more, because I think it's just a little bit vague in my mind. Of competition is not, let's not talk about competition, let's talk about collaboration.
Okay, well, I think this is a great area, Tommy, and I think it is a little bit confused, and I think it appears contradictory, but in my mind, it's not contradictory at all. So if you take a sports team, which is a very good starting point, and whether you've got 11 people or 15 people, you have your American football, we have our soccer, and it doesn't matter. You take a hockey team, whatever. The best coaches understand that the teams that have the greatest success are the teams where there's no one star player. So that if you have a collection of 11 people and the team is more important than my own personal status, my own personal performance, then you create a phenomenal outcome. And the most successful teams in history have tended to be those teams where 11 individuals work tirelessly for the team. So in a business, it's exactly the same thing. I've worked in many businesses, and often you get individuals that think they're the star of the business. You get individuals that think they create more sales than everyone else. You get competition that shows who's the top of the pile. And in my experiences, those businesses, they can be successful for sure. But the more successful approach is one that says all of us have a role to play here. And if we support each other in a very fundamental way, and then the levels of support go deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where you get a kick out of watching your colleagues look good. And that's quite an evolved experience for people to have. But once you've had that experience and you really support other people to be the best they can, then I say you begin to create a new mathematics. And what I mean by that is 1 + 1 + 1 is 7. And I've experienced that in my life. I even experienced it in my marriage. So my wife and I, over a long period of time, we've noticed that when we're kind of a bit competitive with each other, things tend to grind to a halt. When we're really working in harmony with each other, everything is possible.
I can agree with that. And I understand a lot more. I understand a lot more what you're speaking about now. And I do believe you're 100% correct. When you could literally, the way that I do this is I explain this a certain way, and I think you're going to like this. I say, guys, I know you got hired here and you want to be number one. We got 200 technicians. So I say, there's a lot of guys that hate to be last. There's a lot of guys that need to be number one. I'm the type of guy that wants to be number one. But let me explain something. You might be in Milwaukee with 20 technicians total. And the reason why you care about every single person in that room, because when I want to see somebody succeed, by the way, Andrew, I want to see it selfishly. I want to see people own houses because I want to feel good and say, when you worked with me, I want everybody to do good in the world. But, do you want your kids to do better, or would you rather me do better? I think you'd rather your kids do better because they're family. So I think everybody has a little bit of selfishness, but when it's a good thing, I don't think. Look, I think the priest or the preacher is selfish. They want everybody to go to heaven because they want to help them.
Yeah.
But my point is, I tell everybody, I'm taking 10% and I'm putting it into marketing, 8 to 9 to 10%, depending on the market. So if you got a guy failing, that's going to mean less opportunities for you. That's going to mean less billboards, less TV, less radio, less. So sometimes you got to figure out the why to pick people up. And this is a really interesting conversation because I've really started to as we've grown to a lot of employees, not near as what we're going to be here in the next couple of years, but it has to be way more collaborative, and that makes a lot of sense. And because when you get these guys that are self-righteous and gals that really want to just win and they don't care about anybody, it's really hard, and they all act differently. I'd rather have a bunch of B players than a bunch of A's and a bunch of D's.
Exactly.
So,
and what I want to say to you, Tommy, is I'm not a big fan of altruism. I'm not into altruism or sort of doing things to feel good or anything like that. What I'm saying is that collaboration is enlightened self-interest. I'll say that again, that everything I'm talking about is enlightened self-interest. So why would I support other people? Why would I support my children over and against myself? Because I feel great about it. Because basically it's a win-win. And although I definitely have a part of myself that wants to be number one, I often say to people, I think you probably won't agree with this, but I think being number one is overrated. I really do. I think if you talk to people, and I've spoken to a lot of people in sport and business, they will say the experience of achieving something together is an amazing experience, which achieving it on your own does not always give you.
Which is fair. But there's only one Michael Jordan. There's only one Wayne Gretzky. A lot of the people that are saying that have probably never been number one. What I like to do is talk to Tom Brady and say, "Hey, does it feel better winning your all the rings?" But here's the deal: what good is all the money in the world if you don't have anybody to spend it?
Exactly. And also, how many Michael Jordans are there in the world of 8 billion people? Are there 30? Are there 40? I don't know. But the point is that if you're going to build a business, if you're 50 people, 60 people, you may or may not have a Michael Jordan. Most teams don't. And also there are teams, I've known a lot of sports teams that have a figure like that, and they're not the most successful team. Sometimes they are.
Listen, the Red Wings, I'm from Detroit. The reason they did so well is because they played together.
Yeah.
And you look at I understand what you're saying. When I look at, different companies are structured differently. There's a C Corp, there's an S Corp, and there's what's called an ESOP, where everybody kind of owns the business, and you get more equity over time. And there's some good things about it. They kind of self-govern each other, but I realize they're not capitalistic. They're more socialists. They're kind of like, well, we don't have to, no one's over trying. It's kind of like a union. Unions existed for a reason, but I kind of think most of them shouldn't exist now, other than like for certain things as far as making sure you're healthy in the workplace. But, my problem with the union is being from Detroit on the automotive line, where I've had a bunch of family members work, is if you go in there and start working too hard, you're punished. Everybody's going to hate you. They're going to say, you start working that hard, you're going to make all of us work that hard. And, it shouldn't be bad when you do good. And I know these are two different concepts, But
yeah, I think, look, I've had experience of the union world, and I think they're some of the most competitive, selfish people that I've met. So what we're talking about here, just to translate it into business, I was a big hero of Jack Welch. He was an amazing CEO. And as far as I was concerned, he didn't have a massive ego. If you look around successful businesses, look at the businesses where the figurehead wants to be identified, wants to be the hero, wants to be the Michael Jordan, and they might have some limited success. But the most successful businesses is where you have a leader that doesn't need for him and her or her to shine. Because what happens then, if you have a leader that is genuinely interested in empowering other people, is genuinely interested in other people fulfilling their potential, those people will support that leader at least 20, 30% more than the people where the leader wants to be the hero. So this is, I say, it's just self-enlightened interest. It's not altruism. It's saying the best way to get the optimum performance is to empower everyone to be better than they are, and not to need to be the rock star.
And you're right. Jack Welch in Built to Last, Jim Collins talks a lot about how when he had to pass the baton to the next person at General Electric, he believed that he wanted the company to do better when he left. And, a lot of CEOs say, when I leave here, everybody's going to, shit the bed and it's going to be bad. And that's not really what a true leader does.
No.
A true leader should be able to delegate. It should be able to find somebody that's a better specialist than they are. And I agree with that. I just say, listen, I don't know. And listen, you've done psychology, so you probably understand a lot more about classes like communication. But being able to communicate that in the workplace, where do you start? So no matter where you are, let's just say you walk into a business today. We'll use my business because I'd like to hear this. And I think there are guys that want to win, but I'd say here's the deal. When they walk into the training center, a lot of my top guys, they teach, and we do a lot of ride-alongs and a lot of role playing, and they understand just because and so we got rid of just sales being the end all. Now you got to get reviews. You got to put yard signs. You got to do not get tech errors and make mistakes when you're on the field. So ultimately, I love it here when you walk in. How do you identify that main concept of collaboration versus competition? Do you have everybody take a survey? What's the best way to kind of understand where everybody's at?
Well, I think it always starts with myself. It starts with the individual. It starts with our own inner intention. And I think it then leads to a sense of authenticity, a sense of being honest with ourselves. So I think we all know people who stand up and say, I care about my team, I care, and then they do something the opposite. So it starts with a sense of modeling. And just to bring this down to a very basic level, we don't like to talk about this, but it's very common that parents are threatened by their children outperforming them. It's very common that people are threatened by their children being more successful. And a lot of those parents feel envy, or they want to hold them back. It's the same in the business place. It's just, so what we've got to do is get people together and authentically ask them to support a bigger purpose than themselves. Because the organization is always a bigger ask than the individual. And it takes some practice and it takes some willingness to put the organization in front of the individual. But when we do that, the outcome is more. And I'll give you some very simple examples. If I walk into a shop, a shoe shop or something, and somebody doesn't have what I've got, and they say to me, there's a really good shoe shop 2 blocks away and they have a much better stock and why, I immediately want to spend my money in that shoe shop. Or if I'm trying to buy something and someone says authentically, look, we might not have exactly what you've got, but I know someone who does. I really respect them and admire them, and I'm more likely to buy something. Now, maybe not everyone's like me, but if I go to the other shop and I get what they want, I'm much more likely to recommend someone to go to the first store. And for me, this is just simple human nature. And look, I practice it. it works. And a lot of people, they have some fear about it. I say, try it, see how it turns out.
Well, you know, in the Miracle on 34th Street, that was his whole thing. He said, hey, you could go to the other. And so everybody started to recommend the other stores. But I agree that there's certain things when you hit certain levels. You know, I've been doing this business now for, I don't know, 15 years now. And the money and the wants change. I think when you're running with your head cut off and you're working in the business instead of on the business, and your culture kind of comes, it's not even that important. Culture is like, what do you mean culture? I got 5 people smoking. I had 3 guys calling sick today. I got to go get in the truck again. And I think those businesses didn't have a good plan, but that's how I started. So
Yeah.
I didn't have a plan. I got into the business when I was, 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there. So I'm just curious, when you walk in these businesses and you're really trying to get a sense, I'm sure the first thing you probably analyze is the leadership team. And you try to understand, I don't know if it's necessarily the top-down approach, but it's really hard to have a really good business place if the CEO and the COO and the CFO and the CMO are all individualists that just only care about themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't want to give credit to where it's suited.
It's definitely a top-down approach. I tend to work mainly with CEO, CFO, chairman, whatever. And what I've always been fascinated about, right back to Jack Welch, is that when individuals of companies that employ 30, 40,000 people, when a CEO changes, within 6 months, the culture can change very adversely or very positively. It's the same with a sports team. Time and time again, I've seen a situation where a sports team loses 7 games on the trot, the manager gets fired, a new manager comes in, and they win 3 games. Well, it's the same set of players. So the culture comes from the top. And if you have a leader, if you have, in any business, there's one primary leader, which is the CEO, and then there's a team around them. But if you work with the leader, and the leader, just like a parent, demonstrates authenticity, demonstrates a care for the organization, demonstrates a care for all the family, just like a figurehead in a family, then immediately you begin to turn things around very quickly. If it's a fear-based culture, if it's based on arrogance, if it's based on control, if it's based on my way or the highway, you won't get the best out of people. It's as simple as that. And you look around you and you see companies that are based on control and fear. They might do well in the short term. They might go to a certain level, but the companies that outperform them are the companies where there's listening, there's respect, there's people coming together. Anyone can have a good idea, and then the CEO makes a decision.
I think that, this is crazy, everything you're talking about, because the last 4 podcasts, there's a book called The Dream Manager. And the Dream Manager is simply someone that comes on and they just, if I had you start for me, Andrew, I'd want to say, listen, I want to know your goals this year. I want to know your 10-year goals. I want to know what you and your wife have planned, what you have planned for your children. I want to know her goals. I want to know your dreams, though. I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to know, maybe it's to own your own business one day. And here's the thing is, when you start and you come to Phoenix to train for a while, I want to get your wife involved and send her flowers and send her a really nice video from myself. Just saying, look, I'm taking Andrew away from you for 30 days.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you and the family. But it doesn't see, that's usually where it stops. It needs to keep going. And we need to have those conferences with them. And we need to have meetups. And we need to be involved in the community and nonprofits. And then after that, and I've automated a lot of this, but really making sure we're sending a nice message on your anniversary, your work and your marriage, making sure we're recognizing your kids' birthdays. And here's the thing. If you got it, you'd be surprised. And I'm not doing this. I'm doing this because when people hit their dreams, I love it. I love it when they own a house. I love it when they start a retirement account. I love it when they hit a 700 plus credit score. I love it when they get to take their kids on a vacation to Disney World for 10 days.
Yeah.
I'm not a 10-day vacation guy. I like a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend or a 5-day, but I'm not 10 days away is crazy. That's for me. I mean, I'm going to be plugged in somewhere, but you know, what else could we do to build this? Because I'm fascinated by it. I truly am. I really, I'm going to study this now, and I'm going to take a deep dive because you got me excited about it. And I'm not a hard guy to get excited, but I read a lot. I mean, look, I'm reading about space right now, and I got one of these books that I started out. So, but really, so tell me, if someone, because there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this, they're going to say, well, how do I begin to change? How do I change that culture? What else can I do?
So I think just to be really radical for a moment, and we might lose people here, but capitalism is the dominant economic system on the planet. You know, even in China, Soviet Union, pretty much everywhere, capitalism is the basic economic system, certainly in North America, Western Europe. Capitalism is based on competition. It's based on the idea that we have to compete. And competition is based on the energy of lack. It's like there's not enough for everyone, so we have to compete for the finite resources. Now, collaboration is different. Collaboration says there's enough for everybody. There's enough for you, there's enough for me. We can both be winners. Neither of us needs to be number one. We can shine together. Now, that sounds like altruism, or it could sound to some people like wishy-washy, new age spirituality. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about hardcore scientific experience, that when groups of people collaborate, they achieve far much more, and they outperform the competition. Now capitalism, if you talk to the CEO and chairman of the biggest bank in the world, has publicly said capitalism is flawed. Capitalism is dying. And I think the old way of doing business, which is based on hardcore competition, I think has reached a ceiling. And actually, if you look at the way we're organizing our societies, we're organizing our cultures, it is on a path of self-destruction. That the human species is on a path of self-destruction. So what I'm talking about is reorganizing our businesses, reorganizing our life in a way that supports evolution, that supports expansion, that supports success. And the organizations that are doing that, I've created case studies. I've shown how organizations that adopt this are more successful. They're not less successful. If you take a company like Google, and there's many other companies, they were doing this 10 or 15 years ago. You know, I walked into a Google office 20 years ago, and they had the massage rooms, they had the bars, they had the table tennis rooms, they had the yoga studios, and they were basically treating everybody in an adult way and allowing them to run their lives. And it was a tremendously successful company, whether you believe with what they're doing or not. So
I'll just say it about Google is, number one, I have 3 massage chairs. You know, the deal is they still have key performance indicators they have to meet. And the only thing I have to say is I do believe that the world will become social. Socialism will dominate in a way that everybody could share. But the reason why socialism works in some countries, number one, is because of the population, because of oil money. If you look at like New Zealand or any of those in that area, I just have to say the alternative to capitalism is usually socialism. And the problem I have is socialism always almost leads to communism. And all I need to say is that when you vote for leaders, they somehow figure out a way to take, like, look at Russia. Putin hasn't lost in 20 some odd years. It used to be him and another guy. And here's the problem is, I think they're more corrupt than a capitalistic society.
I completely agree. Socialism is socialism is a failed concept. Communism is a failed concept. And what I'm saying,
what's the alternative to socialism, communism, and capitalism?
Yeah, we need to find another way. And what I'm saying is it's neither capitalism nor socialism. It's something about finding a middle way, finding a collaborative way where we support each other to achieve some sort of shared ideal. And it has to work around authenticity. It has to work around alignment. I talk a lot about alignment, and the people you're talking about are operating in a very inauthentic way. The Politburo in Russia or the leaders in socialist countries essentially are not practicing what they preach. They take the money out of the country. So we've got to come together and we've got to be aligned to a common purpose. It's a little bit like in a marriage again. If you're having conflict between, two spouses and everything, the moment you put the marriage first and you create a third entity and you say, what is the best for the marriage right now? You begin to collaborate to create a different scenario. It's the same in business. We're all in this together. How do we create a business, a better business? And it doesn't mean you don't hire people. It doesn't mean you don't fire people. But essentially, you create a group of people that want their company to shine. They want their company to be the best it can. So it's about fulfillment. And for me, on an individual basis and on a corporate basis, rather than trying to compete with you, I can compete with you and try to be better than Tommy Miller. Or I can say, I want to be the best I can be, and I want to support you to be the best you can be. We're different. And maybe we'll operate in the same pond, maybe we won't. But it's a fundamental different approach, and it starts with that basic intention that do I want to beat you at life? Do I want to beat you at business? Do I want to have a bigger profit margin than you? Or do I want to be the best I can be?
In the 5 dysfunctions of a team, what the biggest one that stood out to me was when you've got different layers, and right now we've got all these different, if you look at our org chart, it's not super complex, but it's a little bit complex, is the CSR manager would rather have their group win than the overall company. And I don't know what causes that, but the old thing that I learned from one of my mentors is whiff them. What's in it for me? And sometimes it's just self-glorification. My team's killing it. Your team isn't. And at the root of everything, I will say that human beings, by nature, I mean, I don't know if you're religious, but if you really look back at the Bible, Adam and Eve, they could have lived in a certain way. And I don't know. It just, for me, is I don't like the answer is this is just the way it is, because that's nowhere to go in life. If that's, but I will say is first of all, I want to see those case studies. What I want to do is I'm going to mention that at homeserviceexpert.com / then we're going to put Andrew dash WALLAS. We'll make a lot of this stuff available of what he's talking about, because I think it would be great to look this stuff up and have some good context and be able to read more about it. And
let's just take a really practical example, Tommy. So you mentioned a very familiar situation. You've got a company, one team is killing it, the other team is underperforming. Yeah. And what happens in that situation? You can call it human nature, you can call it what you want. But what happens is the team killing it begins to resent the team that's underperforming. The team that's underperforming begin to feel inferior and all sorts of things. Now, there's various options in that situation. In my experience, and this is what I do with teams, if you bring them together and you say, how do we enhance the performance of both teams? How do we learn from each other? There will be some things the underperforming team is doing better than the overperforming teams. There'll be a lot of things that the overperforming team, but in my experience, and what happens when you do that, you create a little bit of anxiety or fear in the high performing team that they're going to be dragged down to a common denominator. It doesn't happen like that. In my experience, what happens is both teams actually elevate themselves, and instead of having, maybe you've got a high performing team on 10, you've got a low performing team on 3, you have both teams, one at 15, one at 8. And this is very simple stuff. It takes a little bit of work, but if you trust that process, the outcome is very powerful.
That to me is profound, what you just said, because I believe, part of being in a master's program is a little bit different than a lot of other things, is because it really, where I went to school, it depended on collaboration. We worked together on papers. We did presentations together, and we obviously wanted each other to win because our grade depended on it. But, I have a really, really wealthy client of mine. And last Christmas, we went to dinner. And he said, Tom, here's an interesting story for you. He's Canadian. And he said, I started working for Hewlett Packard in the early 90s. And he said, they put us in this room and we didn't know each other. And they put us into groups and they said, 5 of you, 5 of you, 5 of you, 5 of you. And what we want you to do is build this process. It's a process in which you're going to be shipping the package. And we need you to get the QR code, or back then it was, pop label or whatever. And we need to make sure that it's getting sent to the right locations. And as they work through it and they work together, the first one took 1 hour and 30 minutes. And the teacher walks up to him and says, not only is that a bad time, but it's the worst I've ever seen. And, he basically said the same thing to everybody. And so he said, do it again. And because now they each had a role, now they kind of knew each other. They got it down and they said, we killed it this time, 57 minutes. Well, they did this 9 times, something crazy like that. And they got it down, the whole thing over time and time and time to under 30 seconds. Wow. It took them. And so I think what that speaks to is just what it made me think of is when you get in a room and you start to collaborate and start to work with other teams in the company and say, listen, if the CSR doesn't book if marketing doesn't make the phone ring and the CSR doesn't book the phone call and the dispatch person doesn't get the right person out, and it all works together in unity. And this is what I tell the technicians all the time. I said, do you know how many things had to go right to even show up to ring that doorbell? The car had to run perfectly. Yeah. You couldn't get in a car accident. You have to have insurance going. There had to be less traffic that day or perfectly dispatched. And it's like, so do whatever you can to earn that customer's business. But I love the story of the collaboration, meaning you define the meetings. And let me ask you this, because I've been on both sides of the fence. I think I've been where there's like too much collaboration and I'm like, all right, guys, we got to make a move here. We can't wait for it anymore. We got to get some results. And then I've also been to where there's no collaboration and it's like you're there to fend for yourself, just because I've been through a lot of different schooling. So how do you find that? What is the right amount and how do you structure that?
Okay, it's a great question. I think there's 2 different things being talked about here which often get confused and brought together. So the first thing is most of us have worked in organizations, small or large, where there's conflict between the CEO and the chairman, or there's conflict between the marketing or the finance section or whatever. So when you've got that conflict and that competition at the top of an organization, you find that they're undermining each other in different ways. And then that will go through the organization. You have people that are for him, people who are for her, and it's a very corrosive type of environment. But where you get an organization where you see the CEO supporting the chairman, you see the chairman supporting the CEO, it's exactly the same as in families. If you grow up in a family where you see the husband undermining the wife, you see the wife undermining the husband, that's what you learn. It's corrosive. It doesn't lead to harmony. So what you need is collaboration, but it doesn't mean that the business is some sort of cooperative. I've worked with organizations where nobody makes a decision and everyone sits around and talks about everything. I'm not advocating that. That doesn't work. So within a collaborative organization, you still have a decision maker, you have a CEO, you still have roles, you still have functions, but it means that they work together. And just as you said, they understand that they need each other. If you don't have someone to answer the telephone, you can't be a great CEO. If you don't have somebody that, adds up the numbers, you can't be good at what you do. So everybody in the organization, in the days when we had receptionists, you need a receptionist to greet your clients when they come through the door. And without that, nobody can look good.
I'm just wondering though, that to me it's spot on, but it's philosophical, and it's probably philosophical just because you don't know exactly what business we're talking about. But I think the thing that I'd want to know more about is, so you got the COO or the CFO, whatever, or just the GM and the owner, whatever. I don't care who they are. You got the warehouse guy, and what's the best way? Does someone have to go? How do you, and how does leadership get involved? And what's the best way to really, it's interesting because you talked about a coach, and I've seen these guys come out and they switch teams, and all of a sudden the winning stops or the losing stops, exactly like you said. And I do believe, I hate the word manager. Now I think coaching is such a better word.
Yeah.
And I want to be coached. You see, if I didn't believe in coaching, then I would never be coached. So I believe in it because I get coached all the time. I hire a lot of coaches. So ultimately, I'm just curious, is there anything that you would say is step 1, step 2, step 3 to kind of get this going? Or is it all a custom plan?
No, so I think I said it a little bit earlier, but I think in any organization, it's each person fulfilling their potential in the role they're given, whether you're the receptionist, whether you're the marketing director, whether you're the CEO, whatever. Now, I'm going to use a really simple and slightly radical example, but actually it's basically revolves around this idea that the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. And the person who first articulated that was a Greek philosopher called Aristotle in about 600 BC. And when I studied philosophy, my teacher said to me, here's an example. Imagine that you order the top of the range Cadillac, I don't know, most expensive Cadillac you can buy, and it's a 6-month waiting list. And you're really excited because you can afford it, and you speak to the garage and they confirm that they've put the order in, and you wait 6 months, and one day you get a phone call from the garage and they say, Mr. Mello, we're delivering your car this afternoon. And you rush back from the office and you walk up to your home, and there on your lawn is about 38,000 parts of metal and rubber and wood, and it's just scattered all over your lawn. And you phone up the garage and you say, what the hell is going on? And he said, we delivered your car. And he said, you didn't. There's just this mess. And he said, what's missing, Mr. Mello? What is it that's missing? We've delivered everything.
You got to put it together.
Yeah. You've got every single part. There is nothing missing. Here's the contract. And you see, what makes it a beautiful piece of engineering, what makes it functional, what makes it succeed in being a car is each one of those parts, the steering wheel, the brake, the hydraulic, each of those parts playing its function. And this sounds very basic, Tommy, but when you walk into organizations, they're not performing like that. You know, a steering wheel doesn't say, I want to be a brake, or a brake doesn't say to the steering wheel, you're not doing your job well enough. In organizations, there's often a dynamic of competition, a dynamic of envy, a dynamic of fear. When you create a culture where everyone is equally important and you want everyone to perform the best of their ability, but you still have a CEO. Of course, the CEO is paid a lot more money than the person on reception. But you still have this basic principle. And when people understand that they actually start working for the whole rather than, they start working for each other.
And, that's a beautiful concept. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. I really do. I do. I think that business is just, it's harder to do that. And, here's something that I just thought of is you really are only as strong as your weak link. Like, that car will not run if it's got a missing gear in the transmission.
Exactly.
So the problem is, if you've got this view that everybody is, let me hear your idea, and you hear the idea, and I said, Andrew, I think it would be a much better idea if you lived in the United States. In fact, I think you should move to Phoenix, and that's my view. You might say, because I'm selfish and I want you close to me. But you might say, that's not best for me. And I say, well, listen, I've got a couple other people on my team that feel the same way. I just feel like there's a lot more boneheaded ideas than that. It could be, hey, Tommy, and I'll just tell you this, is I'm not the smartest. In fact, we have a lot of people in this company that we use their ideas, and I love opposing ideas.
Yeah.
Without opposing ideas, without that collaboration of what's right and wrong, and let's vote on this. Let's just see, because there's pros and cons to everything. And the biggest thing to back up your theories is with evidence. And just, a lot of people here at a lot of businesses, they hate the facts. They say, yeah, but that, this. And some people are better at debates. So ultimately, and I love the concept of it. And I really do think you're 100. I really believe, because our business has slow. See, notice that. Just the fact is, right now, theoretically, I really own 100%. We're doing some cool stuff here, but the fact is that it's always our business, and these are my coworkers. Mm-hmm. I don't have this point of view as my employees. Sometimes I've said that, and I feel like a dumbass for saying that, because realistically, they pay my paycheck. I'm not out there. I'm out there getting my hands. When I was the guy doing everything, I was paying my paycheck, because literally I was getting greasy. I was doing the advertising. I was booking the calls. So I'm really just, and the concept is amazing. I'm more trying to figure out for the home service people listening out there, and I know a lot of people this has to hit home, is how do we start working more as a team? And you said, well, first of all, you want to maximize your potential, and that's great. And then I think it's just collaboration and working together. And now I understand what you mean a lot more. But
it's really trusting that, because if you go back to the analogy of the car, if your cylinder goes, it's very expensive. If your clutch goes, it's very expensive. If you just need to replace a tire, it's fairly straightforward. But if you've only got 3 tires, you can't drive your car. So there's a different value to every part, but you need every part to function properly. And again, I would say to you that I genuinely believe that there's a whole bunch of stuff I could learn from you. If I came over to the States and we worked together, I think you could make me a better person than I am. The stuff I could learn from you. And I think the stuff you could learn from me, because we've had different experiences and different teachers. Now, it's very easy for people to say that. People can stand up and say that, but they don't really believe it. But if you create a culture where you understand, I genuinely know, Tommy, I'm surrounded by people that sometimes say to me, Andrew, how can you be so stupid? And I don't know. Sometimes I'm ridiculously stupid. Sometimes I'm brilliant. I'm really good at some things. I'm really bad at other things. And as I get older, I have more awareness about that. I learn more about it. And I seek out people that I can learn from. I'm 65 and I'm still growing. I want to grow. I want to be a better chairman next year than I am this year. I want to be a better coach next year than I am this year. And the only way to do that is to learn from other people, like you, like Sarah, like Fred. But most people, a lot of people say that, but they don't really think they can learn from other people. We can learn from everyone.
Oh, no, absolutely. And everybody, I don't care what you were born with. There's no doubt you can learn. But, I think about my collaboration. So I was on a lot of sports when I was in Michigan. Then I moved after my sophomore year. And I went to play with a couple of the different teams, different high schools. And I realized no one would pass me the ball, whether it was football. There was no collaboration in football. There was no collaboration in basketball. Wrestling is something I did in Michigan. And I said, I'm just going to play golf. Because I'm in charge of if I drive the ball the right way. I'm in charge if I have a shitty putt. And the thing is collaboration takes a team. It doesn't take one person. No. But like you said, it comes from top down. So I think if I had to take we're not finishing yet, but if I had some takeaways, I'd say it comes from the top. You got to be willing to build the company with this mentality. And it needs to be, we did a little diet contest about 4 months ago, whatever it was. And I said 3,500 to the first place and then 1,500, then 500. And I announced it and we talked about it a couple of times. But what I realized is I failed as a leader because there's only 3 people that finished. If I would have created accountability partners that touch base every day, and if I would have created, and I would have got their significant others, the person that doesn't work here, involved, and I would have had shorter term goals, and I would have said, this is the way we're going to build this, and here's how everybody wins. It would have been way, way, way more successful.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the things that I'm taking away from this right now is you got to make it. First, you got to believe that collaboration is better. But in a way, and here I go, maybe way off, but I don't think each are exclusive of one another. I don't think you could not. It's collaborative, but you can't be competitive because, I mean, look, I don't play a game, and this is not a game, but you know, we go bowling, and everybody always says when we graduate, I go with the bowling, the class that just graduated, usually 20, 30 guys, and like no one's ever won, and there was one guy that won one time, but I'm like, no, I really, I taught you guys to strive. So better your best. Strive to beat yourself.
Yeah.
So beat yourself.
That's all you got to do. So all you got to do.
And I think,
and, you know, just bringing this round to where we started, you mentioned your experiences of those sports and everything, that all the great tennis players, all the great golfers, they often say they thank their team, that, you know, somebody started out when they were young, somebody encouraged them, somebody now trains them, someone supports them, someone drives them to events. And some of these people, when they're talking, are genuine and others are less so genuine. But they make a point of saying, without all the people they're surrounded by, Michael Jordan himself, he had people.
So he had 4 coaches on top of Phil Jackson. 4 personal coaches.
And what I'm saying is the individuals that thinks it's all about them will have a limited period of success, because what you put out there comes back. And actually, if you think, it's a little bit like somebody who thinks they already know everything, there's nothing more to learn. You meet someone in a social situation and they already know it. Well, there's nothing more you can teach them.
It's interesting. And what do you do when you get that type of person around? What have you?
Not a lot. You just walk away and have another. You look for someone who wants to be collaborative, because, you know, there's no way you can go with that. They've already decided. They know it all. And there are CEOs like that. And they have a limited amount of success, but they always hit a ceiling. Because, you know, I've been in businesses, Tommy, and I know this is, you know, people say this, but I've been in businesses where I know that there's a dozen people who would take a bullet for me. They really would. And you know, they're right, because I will protect their back. When you have that collaborative spirit, you have it in sport, you have it in business, you have it in families. And a business is just a family, whether you've got 20 people or 20,000 people. And when people know that you've got their back, they've got your back. And then the power of that through the organization is tremendous. It really is. I've seen it in action.
Okay, so no, and I feel like this is a transformation that's happening right now with us. But you know, what I find it hard is we always say, me and Adam usually say, if I spent 5 minutes with every employee, that would be 3 weeks later. So how do you create that balance? Because, you know, I've had a dozen people, and I'm close to a lot of people here, and literally, I don't believe in that work life. I bought a house over a year ago, and somebody told me, several people, everybody in the company said, you can't have employees over there. And I'm like, well, they basically helped me have the opportunity to get this home. And I didn't buy it for greed. I bought it because I want to have a lot of fun in this house with the people I love and the people that are here.
Yeah.
And I want to share it, because what good is this house? I don't need this house. But, you know, I since sold the house and moved back into one of my small apartments, but it was just too big and we didn't use it, most of it. But ultimately, and here's the deal, with a great big house, just like a bunch of cars, comes great responsibility. You know, it's easy if you don't have much to lose. I think a lot of people don't understand that. the more you cloud your brain with all these possessions and other crap, sometimes it's like, man, you're always taking care of stuff. It's just a waste of time. So I love what Elon Musk said the other day. He goes, a lot of times I either slept in my office or sleep in my tiny apartment that's 800 square feet. Who cares? Yeah. But he is the ultimate work. He's a workaholic, but what I love about him is he enjoys it. I don't think every day what other people call work, he calls fun.
Well, I think it's really important to have fun. It's really important to enjoy what you're doing. And that's another real reason for collaboration, because when you're competing with each other, you're watching your back. I've worked in organizations where if someone gets an opportunity, they'll trip you up. And you're constantly on alert for that. It's not a nice place to be. So collaboration has many, many different effects, positive effects in terms of, physiology and psychology and emotional well-being. And when people are happy, it's relatively recently, probably in the last 20 years, that CEOs have woken up to the fact that happy people create bigger profits. In the past, you just produced, you treated people like widgets and you got them, outcome up. But now people are beginning to realize if people are happy, if people are fulfilled, if people are feeling good about themselves, they'll create a much bigger outcome. Again, this is one of the shifts that's happening. We want the people around us to feel respected. We want them to feel valued. It's a really simple thing, but if you value the people around you, they'll perform better for you.
100%. I think that's why, absolutely. They start to self-govern. It's crazy what happens when there's a mutual respect and there's an open door policy to a certain amount. But it's amazing when you can truly portray this message of, I want you to win at life. I think I want you to enjoy your life to the fullest. And if you've got dreams that are bigger than mine, maybe I can get you to this point and then you'll zoom right past me. But I don't think you'll forget that we worked together and we enjoyed each other's company. We could be friends for life. And I want to see you zoom past me if that's the goal, because quite honestly, to say that I even got to hang out with you and see you succeed, I feel that all the time. And people call me up and they're like, dude, we went to high school and and I'd say that to other people too. And it's like, holy cow. Do you have any gold nuggets about continuous personal development?
Wow. I think probably to understand that none of us are the finished product is to truly understand. We often get carried away with our successes, or we get carried away with what we know. You're great at certain things. I'm really good at certain things. Rather than focus on that, I hesitate to use the word humility, but there's a kind of humility in saying, I want to be better next year. I honestly want to learn. I want to expand. I want to develop new ideas. And I think that one of the most underrated sort of phenomena that we have is curiosity. I've noticed that a lot of successful people have a curiosity. A curiosity with life. They want to learn new things. They want to learn new ways. And we need to, the world is changing around us at a very dramatic pace. And here's an interesting thing. It's one of my favorite quotes in the business world. Is Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. We need to think about new ways of doing things. We need to be open, not close down on how much we know and how good we are at what we're doing. We need to open up and think of completely new ways of doing things. And those are going to be the people that are going to thrive over the next decade.
And I'd say curiosity mixed with two other traits that I've noticed is the ability to network.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of people tell me that, you meet a lot of millionaires, but the ones that know how to network know how to grow at a much faster rate. And then the ones that are innovative. And the thing is sometimes you could take something from one industry and apply it to another industry. And that's what I love is I hate visiting other garage door companies. I don't hate it, but it's not the same as going to other industries. And then even I've learned a lot. My sister's got her own insurance company, and you can take something from the insurance company. So when people are talking, it's crazy because this is a home service podcast. Okay. A lot of times we talk about, different things, CRMs, and here you are, and we're talking about something that maybe people are having a hard time connect, but it's dead on. And for me, it's a breakthrough, but I don't know, some people might say this podcast, I didn't know how to relate to it. And some people might say the lawn, if we had a lawn care, they don't know how to relate. But when people listen, all I'd ask them to do is open their minds up a little bit and start reading. I always say this: readers are leaders, and curiosity creates readers.
Yeah.
And it's a dirty shame that there aren't more people that read out there, because reading is, we got these.
I really understand that some people might find it a little bit theoretical, a little bit esoteric, but I would say then just try it. For me, this is highly empirical. It's highly scientific. Try it in small ways around you, because when you really collaborate with the people around you, that's what you get back.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. Can you answer a few more questions as we close it up?
Sure.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, if someone wants to find out more about you and they want to really do more research on this subject and really stick their neck out there and really just get involved with a little bit more. Well, how do they get a hold of you? How do they find out more?
Okay, so the best way, Tommy, is andrewwallas.org, O-R-G. And on my website, there's a number of talks, a number of PDFs, a number of podcasts. There's quite a lot of data. It's all free, and people can sort of browse around and just feel what they're drawn to. But I talk about intention. I talk about alignment. I talk about collaboration. I talk about how you achieve greater output by doing less, which is a big thing for people. So there's a lot of information on there.
Wait a second. Say that last statement again. You achieve more.
Yeah. So one of the cornerstones of what I call business alchemy, and this is in my experience of working with people, it's the thing people find most difficult. But in my life, every year for the past 20 years, I've practiced doing less to achieve more. And there's other people who have talked about this, but it absolutely works. And there's an awful lot of people in business that are running around like headless chickens. There's what every business leader knows is there's a point of diminishing return. So the big organizations, Goldman Sachs, the big investment banks, the big law firms, they now put beds in their offices so people can sleep there. They put Costas and coffee bars in their offices. But basically, they know that people are on a treadmill, and if you get another 10% out of them, you might be getting a 1% return. And actually, I practice going in the opposite direction. You need to ease back. You need to rest. You need to get a balance. And when you begin to learn certain ways of practicing your inner life, you can achieve a whole lot more. You really, really can.
It's an interesting. I agree with that. I do a lot less than I used to, but the time I spend is more focused.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot about the meetings that matter more, and how to make your day more valuable.
Yes.
And you don't need, but what? see, here's the weird part is, I don't work near as much, but I probably work way more, depending on when I'm calling it one of the guys that I work with, or having a great conversation, and sometimes it goes 2 hours and it feels like it was 10 minutes. I don't consider that working. I'm not in the office. I'm just having a great conversation with a friend. And sometimes work comes up. Sometimes we're talking through a work problem, but I think that, I think it's an interesting concept, and I do agree with it, but it's focused attention. And I do believe this. I don't do anything I don't want to do anymore. My girlfriend had a birthday party, and she was pretty upset, but I think she had a great time, is that I delegated everything out. I gave 2 people different credit cards to go get everything, figured out the stuff, and she kind of just said, hey, I wanted you. She goes, you didn't really do much. And I said, I made it all happen. I got everything you wanted and more. I feel like, but I think she wanted a little bit more of me going to the grocery store and picking up
yeah.
I'm not the type of guy. I don't.
Let's not get into the differences between men and women now.
That's a long conversation. So that's how we get. So you got a couple of books. Tell us your books.
So there's a book called Business Alchemy. It's obviously available on Amazon, and that talks about the guiding principles behind this alternative business approach. It's really readable. It's very simple. You can read the book cover to cover in 2 hours. And then the other book is called Intention. And I talk about the power of intention because everything exists without intention.
You only have 3 left in stock on Amazon. I just bought both of them.
Okay.
So, and if you were going to recommend 3 books outside of what you wrote, what are those 3 books?
Wow. There's a book called Belonging, which is written by a New Zealand, what's his name? Owen, someone. I'll go and get the book in the moment. But Belonging, it's a recent book. It would then probably be a book called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek.
Yep.
Who's a really good guy. And it would probably be Chicken Soup by Jack Cranfield.
So who did you say the first name was? The Belonging?
Hang on, I'm going to tell you right now. It's Owen Eastwood, EASTWOOD.
Got it. There it is.
He played rugby, which is not an American game, but he played rugby for the All Blacks. And he was a very successful sportsman, and he now does a lot of coaching internationally.
Awesome. So, and then finally, this is where we kind of take the last part of the questions. We talked about a lot of stuff here, and I think the main thing, and I got a lot of notes. I think the main thing is collaboration, not competition. I love what you said. Aristotle, the whole is not greater than the sum of parts. I love support one another, don't undermine one another. Jack Welch, there's a lot of good things here. Henry Ford, you're right. He did say faster horses. I love that. Doing less to achieve more, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to end this with maybe something we didn't get a chance to talk about, or just anything that you think is very, very important takeaways for everybody to listen to and know about right now.
Well, again, it's a huge thing, but we've grown up in societies. We've been to schools, we've been to colleges where we listen a lot to external experts, and the world runs on external experts, and we've seen this over the last couple of years more than ever. And what people then do is they argue about which external experts you want to believe, which scientists you want to believe. And I think now more than ever, we need to listen to our own inner voice. We need to listen to ourselves. We haven't really been taught very well over the last sort of 20, 30 years how to listen to ourselves. And we all have a great deal of inner wisdom. My wisdom might be different to yours, but to really begin to listen to ourselves and then speak our truth. In the business world, in business meetings, we've all got something unique to offer, and not just rely on what Tommy Mello or Andrew Wallas are saying. To really listen to our gut instinct, listen to our intuition, listen to our heartbeat, listen to what our heart's telling us. These are all really important things. And we're not trained very well in those things. We have to relearn them.
Yeah, I don't listen to my inner voice very often. I'm too busy listening to my outer voice.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is great. I really, really enjoyed it. And you're a fresh breath of air. In fact, Cody said, let's see here. This is a good change of pace. Today's podcast is different, but also great. And I'm hoping that these listeners, they just understand that these concepts are so much bigger and bolder than they were 4 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago, I would have been like, I don't understand. Competition is good. And at first I was a little bit maybe opposed to the idea, but when you really think of the greater message, it really is, it's getting everybody involved to care. It's getting everybody to really find that common thread of just the group wins together. We all win. It's we share in the wealth. And I really, really love that concept. And I'm going to really, really think a lot about this. I got your books. I'll go through them. And I really, really appreciate you coming on. And I'll be in touch. Your number is really hard. It's like 07977. Long number, but I'll definitely be reaching out to you again here in the next month. And I appreciate your time today.
I really enjoyed it, Tommy, and I feel energized by our discussion. So thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, I'm excited too. This is going to be a good day. So I've got some key takeaways I'm going to go do here in a little bit, and I'll be in touch with you. Thanks, Andrew.
Beautiful. Thank you. Have a lovely day.
All right. Take it easy.